Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, tonight I have Rudy Esquivius with me. He's a senior planner in the back. We're gonna do a tabletop thing. I think it's kind of fun when we're done here. So we got about a half hour just of me talking. You can ask questions as we go. That's fine. And Stephanie Bubenheim is a new planner. She is an assistant planner for the city as well. But I'll talk about kind of the three functions we have: planning and zoning, the building inspection department, and the revenue, which Roger's going to come and talk later about revenue development, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. But yeah, we did have the downturn with the recession. Things are picking up. I think we see a lot more people at the counter. Permit activity is picking up. We have the new fries, and Bryant maybe talked about that a couple weeks ago. And what that means, you know, we survive essentially on sales tax. There's no property tax that the city collects, so there's really just the fire district, the school district, and the county, and the city, which is unusual for me being from Wisconsin and the Midwest. It's all property tax. Right, so as I mentioned, we have three functions: planning and zoning. Al already talked about the Planning and Zoning Commission. They meet twice a month. They hear items before they get to the council. So they are citizens like yourself. There's 7 members. And I think Tess Nesser comes to these kind of at the end. I think you hear from a volunteer. I know in the past, she's the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. She's also the chair of the Park and Rec Board. And she's been a volunteer at the city for 25 years. But she may come and talk. I don't know if Al, if she's on the docket or not for later. But the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear like new subdivision plats. So if someone has you know, raw piece of land and they want to subdivide it. We have a couple new subdivisions going in right now. One is Stagecoach Trails off of Superstition, and I think it's Maine. And then the other, that's 103 lots, I believe. And then another one on Tomahawk, just south of Old West Highway, same developer, Dan Kaufman. He has another 103, 104 lots. That's called Bella Agave. That one's an over 55 community. So in the case of Stagecoach Trails, it's 15 acres. Dan had to make sure the zoning was proper first. If zoning is not what he wants to get the density and all that, you go through a rezoning process usually first. Then he comes in with a preliminary plat, kind of shows the lot layout. That preliminary plat gets approved by the Plan Commission and the council. And then if everything's a go, he does all his engineering. And then the final plat just goes to the council. So the council approves the final plat for the 104 lots. Gets recorded at the Register of Deeds. And as you can see over the next year, you'll see him getting started with the silt fence going up and the grading and clearing and grubbing. And you'll start seeing the infrastructure going in, the water, the sewer, the roads, curb and gutter, sidewalks, the amenities, et cetera, et cetera. So that's Plan Commission hears subdivisions, they make a recommendation to the council. The other one is a rezoning, like I mentioned. So if you have a piece of property and someone, maybe for speculation or otherwise, maybe it's zoned residential, but it's on a corner, and they say, oh, that might be a nice place for commercial. And so they would seek a rezoning. Then what we would do as staff, it would go through the Plan Commission, they make a recommendation, we put together a staff report and see if it's consistent with the general plan, and then recommend approval or denial. Same thing with the Plan Commission. They recommend approval or denial with the council. So Rudy had a land use map in Arizona. It's a little different than I'm used to. This is called a general plan, which really means it's really general. In other states, you have a comprehensive plan that gets down to the parcel level. Like your parcel, it's almost like a zoning map. You look at a map and you can find your parcel and say, the land use designation for my property is one of 15 land use categories. Then in addition to the land use category, you'll have a zoning district. So we have 10 residential zoning districts, single family residential districts. We have 3 multiple family zoning districts. We have 5 commercial zoning districts, and we have public institutional district. So the way planning generally works is the community puts together a general plan. By state law in Arizona, this has to be updated every 10 years. So this last was done in 2010. And then actions that a city does should be consistent with the plan, whether that's a rezoning, whether it's a subdivision plat, whether it's a conditional use permit. There's policies. I'll pass this around. You can kind of skim through it. So you kind of start out with the general plan, and then all actions that local government takes are supposed to be consistent with the plan. So that's the one commission that we deal with, is the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then the other one is the Board of Adjustment. They meet not very often, but say you want to do something with your property and there's some sort of physical limitation on your property and your house can't meet the setbacks. Maybe there's a wash that's going through your property, but we don't want you to not be able to use your property, so you'd say, I need a variance. So you get a variance is you'd say, I have a hardship, I can't build my house, I'm supposed to be 20 feet from the lot line, but because of this wash, I need to be 15 feet from the lot line. And so you'd go to the Board of Adjustment, you'd fill out an application with us, and you'd go to the Board of Adjustment. It's what they call a quasi-judicial hearing. They are, again, all citizens, but testimony is given, a decision is rendered, and they vote yes or no. I think that's appealable to Superior Court, maybe. So you'd say, well, I can't get my house done, so I need a 5-foot variance. So I want to do a 15-foot setback instead of a 20. We don't hear them very often. A lot of things that cities do is, rather than try to do a bunch of variances, they kind of just look at the zoning code and they say, is there anything in the zoning code we can fix? Say if you get 5 variances on the exact same topic, you really got to look at your code and say, maybe our code needs to be adjusted. So the general plan is meant to not be carved in stone. It's updated every 10 years. Same thing with our codes. The plan implementation tools after you have the general plan is what I said, the land development code. Now the land development code is kind of scary. The land development code is like much bigger than the general plan. So these are all the regulations that help implement the vision and the goals in the general plan. So in here we have the zoning code, which is several hundred pages. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the subdivision code. So when Mr. Kaufman developed his property, he's got to develop it consistent with this subdivision code. Chapter 3 are how streets are supposed to be engineered and laid out. Chapter 4 is how utilities, I think these are now put in the back in chapter 10. So I think chapter 3 and 4 are gone. They're in the back in chapter 10. Chapter 5 is floodplain and stormwater regulations. Landscaping was chapter 6. That's now moved. So they're kind of consolidating. This is called the land development code. Landscaping is now in the zoning code. Chapter 7 are the fun ones. Those are the development fees. So what happens what a development fee, some people call them impact fees. So if you build a house and the land's been vacant, when you get your building permit, you have to pay $4,900. Oh, you had a manufactured home, so I think yours was about 39. Was it 48? Same. Oh, because it's not in a mobile home park. So it's $4,900 Dave had to pay when he got his building permit to put his house on a vacant lot. So Fry's is coming in, hopefully this week, next week. They pay development impact fees that are all adopted by ordinance. Theirs is like $792,000 Fry's is going to pay in a development fee. Most of that goes for roads, for impacts to roads. There's a small bit for police. There's for the library and Parks and Rec. So we collect 4 different impact fees or development fees in City of Apache Junction. Building and safety, Dave Zellner is the building official. He's been here about 2 years. Dennis was here before. He was here for 19 years, our building official. But they have functions with regard to code compliance and building safety. And I got some pictures I think you might enjoy for code compliance. And then there's kind of, during the slow time, we kind of changed up how we did staff. We had 3 people who were half-time permit technicians at the permit counter. And the other half-time they were doing code compliance. And then we had another person who full-time was code compliance. So Bob retired. He used to give the presentation. One other person left. But when Dave came in as a new building official, he said, and I think we got feedback from the staff, it's like, they like being out in the field and doing code compliance, but sometimes it's like social work because you're dealing with folks that might not be able to take care of their property. But so now we got 2 people at the front counter, full-time front counter. They understand how the building permit process works. They got their attention to that, and then we got 2 people now full-time doing code compliance. So rather than split up the duties and, so I think Dave has made some improvements trying to speed up how permits go through, taking care of backlogs and things like that. But one of the things we do under the code enforcement, this is volume 2. The city code is broken into 2 volumes. So volume 2 is all the land development code, the zoning, subdivision regs, all that stuff. Volume 1 is kind of your general city codes. One of them is called Chapter 9, Volume 1, Chapter 9. That's what we call the property maintenance code. And there's really 4 or 5 things that we write up for code violations. That's like inoperable vehicles, outside storage, there's parking. There's some zoning code violations that the code people do too. So if you're running a business out of your house and you don't have the proper business licenses. So this would be an inoperable vehicle. This would be outside storage. Did I go the right way? Got to go this way. That's just another angle of the same thing. So that's mostly what we do is we have to see it from the street, or some parts of AJ, their driveway into their house is on an easement, but we can write up violations on an easement. One of the things is that we're going to take back to the City Council is Chapter 9 was adopted in 2006. It was started in about 2000. It took 5 years to adopt a property maintenance code. It was not easy to do, but it's been around for 10 years. I went to the council a few months ago and I had a brochure from the city of Mesa. So many of the things that we cannot write up, Mesa prohibits. So one of the phenomenons that you might know is that the city does not require you to have your trash picked up at your house. So we have 3 trash haulers. So you can pick between Waste Management, RAD, or Republic, but you don't have to. You can store it, and then you can take it to the landfill once a week, or you can wait for the free pickups 4 times a year, the free dump week, and we have a lot of people that seem to do that. They store it for 3 months, and then they take it to free dump week, and they take it. So a lot of what we see, I think, is a consequence of us not having that. This is one where this gentleman, we're working on a case where he has an auto repair business in his front yard and side yard and in the street and everything else. This one, again, it could be weeds, might be the violation here. This is just a dilapidated structure, so we do condemn structures once in a while. Again, somebody living, outside storage. We got 2 angles on this. I think there was somebody living in here, so we had to get it cleaned up. Again, outside storage. There's a lot of these, outside storage. This horse, we got a horse on a property that doesn't have 1 1/4 acres, so that's a violation. Apparently no solid waste collection, outside storage. Might be an operable vehicle, not quite sure.
Doesn't have any wheels.
So we get a lot of mattresses, but so we do, so if we're down a street and we see this and we get a complaint and we write this up, and 3 houses down we see something, we write that up. If we're in the neighborhood, we write it up. So it's not just complaint basis that we do. When we just redid the whole code in 2014, it was a huge effort, but you always have to tweak it. So we'll be taking some changes to the zoning code. The subdivision code, that Chapter 2 in here, hasn't been looked at for 20 years. This Chapter 9, like I said, hasn't been looked at since 2006. And again, public input matters when we go to these things. So the idea is on January 17th, our department, we're going to take a presentation to the council, and basically it's called direction to staff. So if you went to the meeting last night, they have an item on the agenda called direction to staff. So we're going to get direction to staff for us to go work on the building code, the subdivision code, tune up the zoning code. We got to make changes to the wireless code because of The Federal Communications Commission did some things to preempt us from doing things, so now we got to make our code consistent with the Federal Communications Commission. All those things we're going to ask the council on. This is probably one of the bigger ones, on Chapter 9. Council, do you want us to go work on, now whether, it's a separate discussion as to whether the council feels everybody should have curbside pickup, which I think they're going to go to, because Pinell County, in the health code, Pinell County requires mandatory trash collection. And I was asking around, I asked the city of Mesa, the lady that has my job in Mesa, she sent me a state statute that says you have to have solid waste collection in Arizona as a municipality. They let you have recycling. It's actually, the state code says you have to have twice a week. But one of them can be recycling. So I think it's just maybe part of our growing pains. I mean, not blaming anybody, but we're 38 years old. We have a landfill. We have these kind of low density, rural, acre and a quarter lots. People are used to putting it on the trailer and taking it to the landfill. And so we didn't want to burden folks. But I think the community is a little different now than it was 38 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago. And maybe there wasn't a discussion that it was a state requirement then.
Could you specify?